you have to find the leaders that are going to believe in you. I'd like to say that everybody's entitled to good leadership, but let's face it, you're not. What I tell young people is you're not always going to have good leadership, but it's your job to recognize that. And it's your job to go seek out somebody who will take an interest in you, who will take an interest in developing you. I had to do the same thing. There were certain people who wanted nothing to do with developing me, pouring knowledge into me, but I did. I went and found people who I thought I could learn to trust, right? And wanted to put that hand out and pull me up and develop me as a young person. So what I would say is when you run into those roadblocks, you're going to have to go find somebody that believes in you, and wants to invest in you, wants to pour into you.
This episode of the It's Needed podcast is brought to you in part by Thin Line Anthem. Thin Line Anthem is the vitamin and supplement brand for first responders. I take their omega-3 and probiotic blend every single day before I hit the streets because I know you can't help others until you help yourself first. Be sure to check them out online at thinlineanthem.com and be sure to use promo code It's Needed, all capital letters, no space, for 20% off your order. Enjoy the podcast.
Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the It's Needed podcast where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement in the community. It's your boy Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Barriers United, and I'm joined today by the light-skinned wonder himself, Mr. Oh No, It's the Popo. What's going on, AJ?
And his luxurious beard. Magnificent beard. You can't forget that part. You always got to add that at the end until I shave this thing off.
Yeah, and when are we shaving it off? Because I'm sure you and the wife, me and the wife, are on the same team with that.
She is definitely on team shave the beard, but you know what? I'm going to grow this bad boy until they force me to shave it.
You're like a light-skinned Rick Ross. We are joined also by the Savage himself. He doesn't have a mic. He's in the background today because some technical difficulties. But AJ or Billy, what's going on, brother?
Hello.
Yeah, say hi, bro. We can still hear you in this mic. we can still hear you.
I love it. Yeah. Hello.
Hey, you should have saw him too. You should have saw him, AJ. He was like, hello. And I am joined today by two very, very special guests, but more so friends of mine. One of the things we always talk about is support through your journey. And without support through your journey, it's very, very easy to kind of go stale or stagnant. And so one of the reasons why I'm in the position that I'm in today is because I've had so much overwhelming support by friends and family. So the first guest we have with us today is my retired Chief Karen Comstock. How you doing, Chief?
I'm doing good, Ryan. It's good to see you.
Oh, always good seeing you. You'll always be my chief.
Yeah,
always.
You're a shiny star, man.
Always.
We're proud of you, huh?
Thank you so much, Chief. And then we're also joined today by my brother from another mother, one of the co-founders of Breaking Barriers United. And, just a pastor of, it used to be Praise Tabernacle, but it's now Transformation Church. Yeah. So Pastor Jody Moore, how you doing, Pastor?
I'm doing great. Wow. I'm excited to be here with you. This is where it all happens, huh, man?
This is where the magic happens, man.
Goodness. I can feel when I walk through the door, man. I just like, whoa, felt it.
This is where the magic happens, man. You guys get the little behind the scene glimpse.
Good.
You guys are really what it is. You're like, oh, this ain't much at all. I thought it was some grand slam conglomerate. Oh, man. But thank you guys all for being here today. It's truly an honor. The reason I have them here today is because I want to help others out there that are listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, to understand what they need throughout their journey to get to where they're going. And I want other people that are pursuing, places of leadership or places of influence. What are some of the things that, they need to know as they go along this journey? So before we get into that, let's talk current events. Last time we talked, what was that, last Monday? Phenomenal guest last week. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to listen, but we had a guest on that was talking about just internet security and the dangers of the internet. And it was mind-blowing. We had an employee of ours at Chino PD, actually, that approached me. I didn't even know she listened to the podcast at all. She's not a police officer, and she was telling me as she started to listen to it, and she said she started crying at her desk. And I was like, wow, like that's powerful. And the reason she was crying is because she was hearing, she has young kids. And so to hear this message about what our kids are susceptible to and the dangers of it, just really made her, start to cry. And what was cool is like she saw that the podcast, her husband, I guess her husband's been listening forever, who's not an employee. So he's been listening forever. and she saw like an hour and 15 minutes, and then she was like, then she started listening, and she was like, it felt like the time went by so fast I had to start another episode because she was that engaged to it. So I really appreciate all the supporters, but that was a great episode. And any feedback on your end about that, AJ?
About the same. People were hitting me up. A bunch of my wife's coworkers actually reached out to me through her to thank us for talking about what we did. So a lot of positive feedback.
That's so cool. And then the current events too. I see that hat that you're rocking right there.
Oh yeah.
You weren't even going to say anything about it.
I've had this on, I think, the last episode and maybe the one before that as well. So
shame on me.
Yeah.
So you guys, that's the AJ has his brand AJ Speaks, and so that's his brand. When am I gonna get a hat though? That's what I want.
Oh, we could definitely make that happen.
Oh.
I don't know if we have enough material to make a big enough hat. We could arrange something.
It wasn't this big when I met him a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, it's
When
definitely
we first started
bigger.
this BBU thing, you know what I'm saying?
Here we go.
See what success does, right?
Oh yeah.
Now I want a hat too, man. So if y'all AJ
yeah.
Speaks,
AJ Speaks.
Yep, I need
Looking
JD
good.
Speak, JM Speaks, or something like
There
that.
we go.
Man.
There we go. I like it. Yeah, we can make that happen.
I love it.
Perfect. So let's jump right into the conversation. One of the ways I'm going to steer this conversation is I'm going to piggyback off of AJ, and then I want, Chief or Pastor chime in, whatever. But one of the things I want to talk about, AJ and I, our journeys have not always been the easiest, but again, success doesn't always come easy. And so I think a lot of times we just see the aftermath of success, and we just figure, I can't tell you how many times you heard like, oh, they got it so lucky. Not even realizing the adversity that we've all gone through. So, AJ, your road to where you're at right now hasn't always been easy, correct?
That is 100% correct, brother.
So without getting into specifics, because I don't want to get you fired, obviously, but tell me about a little bit of the adversity that you've gone through on your journey to changing the world, transforming the world. And then when you tell me that, there's a way I'm going to tie this all in together. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll try my best to not go into specifics. And if I do, my man Billy is going to come in clutch here. So really when I started my journey throughout like social media, speaking, and kind of became like this public figure online, I thought I would receive nothing but support from the community and from my peers and supervisors. And it was the opposite. I definitely had a ton of support from the community. You're going to have a small group of community members who, no matter what you do, they're not going to like you. They're not going to support you. I expected that. But the amount of obstacles and pushback from my peers and supervisors was mind-blowing. To the point where I've had my job threatened. I've had supervisors threaten me. I'm going to fire you if you continue to do this, or, you recorded this video. I've had higher ups say behind closed doors that, AJ kind of brought this attention on himself when there were rioters at the front door of my house. A lot of things that really affected like my mental health and my personal life. So yeah. I mean, it's been a rough journey. I have had a lot of supporters and supervisors who have supported me throughout the journey. So I want to make that clear. My former chief was a huge supporter. She would call me all the time and, let me know, AJ, you're doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing. My current chief, he loves it. He's always telling me, AJ, don't stop. If anything, kick it up. But there's definitely been a lot of pushback and a lot of obstacles put in my way by the people in between myself and the chief. And a lot of those people have power.
Thanks for sharing that. And kind of like AJ, actually it's kind of opposite for me. So from day one, when I started at the Chino Police Department, and Chief Comstock can attest to this, I've always been supported from the very beginning, from my commanding officers, from the very, very beginning. I had this journey, or I had this idea to start something that was going to bridge that gap between law enforcement and the community. And I brought it to the chief at the time, which was Chief Comstock, and she supported me without a doubt. And a lot of her colleagues did as well. But it didn't mean that I didn't have some adversity. And I think it was more so anytime somebody does something new, you're always going to have some type of opposition. You're going to have some people that what I quote unquote the haters. But I want to pose a first question to you, Chief. when you're in a position like that, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, the chief is the head honcho in charge. Like that is the buck stops at you.
That's right.
So, you have an obligation to advance the organization forward, but you also have an obligation to keep the organization safe. So how is it when you have two young, chargers coming out the gate that want to, do all this change, that especially, and for us, a lot of it was new because we're kind of, we didn't know how to take in the social media thing. It was all kind of brand new.
That's right.
So how do you help people, or how was it that you were able to, chart those waters? And there's something I'll bring up later on, but how were you able to chart those waters initially when you have somebody that's out there like, man, he wants to go out there and conquer the world and change the profession, but yet I still got to keep the organization safe?
Oh, that's a great question, Ryan. It's a balance, right? Because when you see a person like yourself with a lot of potential, a lot of talent come through the door, the first thing that has to happen is this conversation like, well, where are you trying to go with this? What are you trying to accomplish? And I knew from the beginning what you were trying to accomplish and how hard it would be. So in the beginning, you kind of have to keep a hard driver like that in their lane and be supportive. And what that means is, supportive means that, hey, I can get my mind around what this young guy's trying to do. And it has to start at the top. And it has to say, hey, listen, he's trying to implement some change. He's trying to have some hard conversations. Because let's face it, the conversations you started in the PD, they were hard to have, right? I mean, but they were necessary. And we really, really had to get there and get real with ourselves. But it's not easy to do, especially with some of the things we're going to talk about, right? And the platform really needed to be born by somebody who had a passion for making a change, right? And when you see somebody with so much, well, I would say fire in the belly that really wants to tackle it, because this is a hard thing to slay, what you're going after right here. And I knew from the beginning when we started talking about race and change in the PD, and these were conversations that had to happen because it started with me as a chief of police wanting to read even President Obama's a report on the 6 pillars of policing, right?
The 21st century
21st century policing report, and that was tough, because there was a lot of things in there that we had to take a look at and say, hey, are we doing these things? What are we talking about? But the platform that you came to with us was so exciting. I was like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to get behind this young man. We're going to support him. And there was a lot of people that didn't, and in the beginning when you don't understand it, right? And I knew what you were trying to do, and it's a delicate balance with being careful about, hey, listen, we're going to support this guy, but but while we're implementing this change, anytime you change anything, it makes people uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable, right? And so there's a little edge to it, but and it takes time, baby steps, progress, right?
It does.
Baby steps.
It does, and that's one of the things that I appreciated is that one of the things that people face, and if you're listening to this, you've probably been the victim to it as well, is like sometimes you'll go to a place and you want to do an idea and it gets shot down immediately, like no questions about it, just like, hey, it's shut down. And that's one of the things I've always appreciated from day one, is that you guys always had an open door to say, okay, cool, it sounds like a good idea, we want to know more.
Right.
And then but it was on me. So one of the things you just said right now, the key to doing this type of work, or whatever it is, the work that you want to do, is there's one word that comes to mind, is that word passion. Because passion is what's going to get you through the adversity. Passion is what's going to create the vision. Passion is what's going to create the mission. And passion is what's going to help you execute. And so, that's kind of one of the things I possess, but passion without help, passion without allies, you can almost find your idea crashing very quickly. So one of the things that I did very early on was I realized that because I was a newer officer, I needed somebody with credibility. And that's one of the things that I want people to understand, is that, yeah, you can go out there and you can change the world, but you also got to get people in your corner to be able to help you, because there's going to be other people that bring a level of experience that I don't have yet. So if I'm real with myself, I mean, I was a rookie cop coming in trying to change a profession that I still was trying to learn my day job in. You know what I mean? Right. And so, but one of the things I knew was we needed change. And so immediately from very beginning, after talking to the chief and the command staff at the time, one of the very first conversations that I had, and I was actually introduced to Pastor Jody over here, was by one of my sergeants. And he said, hey, I love your mission of what you're trying to do, but I think what we need to do is I think let me pair you with somebody. So I went to talk to Pastor Jody, and if right now we're seeing a lot of unrest in our communities right now, but if there's anybody that you want to help you with the change of your city, you need to go talk to the local, the parishes within your religious parishes in your city, because they have so much influence, and Pastor Jody is one of them. And so, Jody, do you remember the conversation we had? I remember we went to the restaurant and we were telling, I was telling you about my idea second. What was your initial reaction to that? And, what made you want to get on board with this mission to change that the way people view policing?
It's funny, as you were talking, Ryan, I got to tell you, I remember that conversation as if it was just yesterday. As if it was yesterday. I think the first time we talked, it was actually over the phone, and that was just to set us up to go and connect and break some bread and then converse about what you saw. And I got to tell you, what you were proposing, the vision that you had, I knew that it was going to be life-changing for me. And it has been, but most of all, I knew the impact that it was going to have on the local community, but on policing in general. And so, I don't mean to use a cliche, but I'm going to use it anyway. I knew it was a game changer. Hashtag game changer. Seriously, I knew that this was about to flip the script, change the game. It was going to do some things that had never been done before. It was going to expose some things that had never been exposed before. And so, when I'm hearing you talk about my friend Chief Comstock, and let me just say right here, this is so cool because I'm sitting here with two of my favorite people in the world, seriously, Ryan Tillman and Chief Karen Comstock.
Ditto.
To hear you say how she responded, that says so much about her extraordinary character, because oftentimes the greatest resistance to the level of change that you were proposing would be the ones at the very top, because oftentimes they are vested in keeping things status quo. They're and so for the chief to say, no, this is good. This is something that needs to happen. I want to put my support behind an unknown quantity. You said you were a rookie at the time. That says a lot about her integrity. That says a lot about the chief's ability to think, to have forward-leaning thinking, but also about your ability to build trust with other people. You can't do the kind of change work that you're trying to do, that Chief, you're trying to do, that I'm trying. You can't do change work without a foundation of trust. So the substratum to all of that is trust. And you've been able to build trust. And I think that's why we've been able to see the success that we've seen with BBU and all the work that you're doing out there.
So before, I know AJ has some questions too, but before we get to AJ's questions, I want to ask Chief, like, how do you, because that takes a level of courage to step up to people, when they're trying to shoot something down, especially on the unknown. It takes a level of courage to stand up for an unknown. And really, I was an unknown because I was so new. And yet, I had this idea, but yet, and this was right around the time Ferguson. So to kind of give our audience a little bit of background
about Ferguson,
this was right around the time that Ferguson happened. So the idea was, hey, we're going to go and have a conversation with the city, put them through some scenarios as law enforcement officers, and then stimulate this conversation. And unfortunately, at the time, there were a lot of people that were saying, "Oh, Ryan's just trying to do this to kiss up. Ryan's trying to do this to
want attention.
Wants attention. Yeah, he's trying to get promoted." I'm like, yeah, here I am a year on trying to get promoted.
I remember.
Like there was no, exactly, and that wasn't my intent at all. My intent was I saw a problem, I wanted to fix it. So it takes a level of courage. So where do you find that courage, or how do you continue to push on, even though despite you're going to get some opposition? And that's what, as I've been getting older, as I've been moving up in the organization, I start to understand the difficulty of having a role as the chief of police, or just even a command position, because what I've learned is a lot of people at the bottom, that we all have our needs. Like we all have our needs, and we want them to be met. You know what I mean? And we're like, oh my goodness, they don't understand this. They forgot where they came from, this and that. But then as you move up, you start looking at liability. And so what I'm getting at is that you're in a tough position because, you know, a lot of people are going to, one of the things that I don't know if you've ever remember you told me this, was one of the most difficult things about being the chief of police is that everybody has to say hi to you.
That's right.
And I never ever forgot that, because and she was like, think about it. I'm the chief of police. So when you walk around the station, everybody, they can hate your guts,
but they have to say something.
But they're going to be like, hey, chief, how you doing? Very rare will you find that 1%er that just won't say anything just blatantly. But so that statement to me made me feel like, wow, like that. I never thought about it from that aspect. So how did you manage that role and that transition from you? Because you started at the bottom just like everybody else, and at the end of your career, you went out at the top.
Well, you know, I remember that conversation too, Ryan, and it sounded like this. It's like, hey, the higher up you go, you know, one of the things you miss is just really knowing who your true friends are, right? Because, like you say, it's like out of a show of respect. If for nothing else, even if you don't agree with the way I'm running the department, you know, most people are. They're going to be the chief of police. Say, hey, good morning, ma'am. How are you? Hey, how's it going, chief? But what I remember distinctly, Ryan, when you started this was, hey, let's face it, you know, over 30 years of policing, and when I first joined the job, you know, there were very few women, very few minorities working at the department. We almost felt like, hey, we had to have a few of them around, right, just to keep our place. But you know, if I wanted to be, you know, straight up about it, the fact of the matter is, I work with some pretty tough, pretty brutal cops that were out there really, you know, not doing us any favors, you know, during their contacts, and particularly in some of our, you know, what I would call our marginalized neighborhoods. And it took years, it took decades for people to actually say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to police that way. You know, there was a, you know, as the tide was changing, we were bringing on different people. We had to take a stand and say, hey, no, we're not going to police that way any longer. So over years, we started changing the face and, you know, and the makeup of the Chino Police Department. And what was happening is I was like anybody else sitting at the top of an organization watching these failures across the nation with the police and communities. And I'm saying to myself, hey, I'm in a position now to do something different. And I'm going to have the courage, and I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to be bold. And I've got a young guy who's got the passion, he's got the personality, and he's got the vision. And my job at that point, because I am sitting in a higher place, and what I like to tell people is, hey, when you come in the organization, it's like hiking a mountain. You're at the bottom of the trail. You're at the bottom of the switchback. Well, I've been up that switchback now, and now I'm at the top of the mountain. I got a different view on things, right? And I got to have a different view on things because I got to be constantly preparing the organization to arrive, you know, 6 months, a year, 18 months down the road. That's the job of a good executive, is preparing them for what they're going to face. And amen. I mean, thank God we did the work that we did, because look where we're at today. We're right back to square one with, hey, how do we get, you know, the police and communities back together and, you know, and understanding each other. And you're right, Jody, it starts with trust. So Ryan, you know, to get to the top, it was just about self-preservation, like you. I mean, I remember having tons of conversations with, like, Ryan, I've experienced that. You know, not necessarily as a black man in policing, but as a woman. You know, as a woman in policing in a very, very male-dominated field. In fact, I remember telling you at one point, hey, what about black people or minorities? How about women? How about more women in policing, right? Because we bring something different to the table. We really do. We have a different perspective on things. We handle things differently. But in doing that, you know, I thought to myself, hey, you know, we're going to get in front of people. We're going to talk about what it means to know your police department, get involved, know your police department, know us, trust us. But then I had to come to the realization that there was a lot of police departments out there that weren't running the same way we are, right? And that's the fact of the matter. And just making a commitment. And then the other part of that, Ryan, was keeping you in your lane for a while, right? You know, because there was projects you wanted to do in the beginning. I'm like, hey, no, Ryan, trust me, that's not good. That's not where you want this brand to go. And because we had trust, right? I'm like, I mean, there was a couple things you want to do. I'm like, Ryan, no, that's not good. You know, because I knew you know, it's like serving a search warrant. You always start with the end in mind, right? You know, you go through these steps and you want to start with the end in mind, where you want to be. And that was my job at that point. You had the passion, you had the mission, you had the credibility to get there. My job was to help you get to, you know, hey, where you want to be at the end, in the beginning. You know, because your mission was still evolving. I knew what you were trying to do, and I knew it was needed, right? But I needed the right messenger. And even as a chief of police, every now and then you're like, hey, I need somebody to go over there and talk to AJ, man, because he needs some tuning up over there, right? AJ needs some tune up, right? But it may not be me that needs to go deliver that message to him. And maybe it's Pastor Jody. So I go to Pastor Jody and say, hey, man, have you talked to AJ lately? You know, he needs some help over here, right? Or he needs some coaching or some mentoring. So sometimes it just takes a different messenger. So I had the messenger in my hand, right? With the passion and the vision. And it was like, hey, how do we get this guy? How do we support him and get him down the road?
And that's what it's all about too. Is that I mean, you look at any successful business. Every successful business you look at, even the church, you have your advisory board, and that's what they're there for, is to lend that advice. And so if you're somebody that wants to go out there and change things, you got to start to put together a team, because you're not going to be able to conquer a journey by yourself. One of the things I hate the most is that term that says I'm self-made. Like, no, you're not self-made.
Nobody.
You're not self-made. And when somebody tells me that kind of tells me a little bit about their character. Now, maybe they've said it and they didn't mean it in that context, but it takes a team effort. So AJ, talk to me and talk to our audience about, developing the people in your corner to help you, because again, we're not self-made, and you wouldn't be able to get to where you're at right now without some people that have actually assisted you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, anything worth having is worth fighting for. So I just want everybody out there to know that. But in order to fight, you must sometime link arms with people and fight together. I would not be here if it wasn't for many people who became mentors and really good friends in my life, who helped propel me closer towards my goals. I wouldn't be a police officer if it wasn't for me running into a police officer at a time when I did not like the police, him opening his doors to his home to me, taking me under his arms and showing me the way. So you're absolutely right. There's people out there who will claim, oh, I did this by myself. I'm self-made. I never asked for anything. I never got anything. And I'm telling you right now that is a lie. It's a facade that people want you to believe because they want more credit, or that they want you to think that they're the toughest person in the world, and it's just not true. We just wrapped up our conference. We talked about the power of mentorship. Every single one of our speakers, including the number one motivational speaker in the world, credited him having mentors and people in his life that helped him become the person he is. The same thing with me. I've had many mentors and people in my life who helped me become the person that I am. Same thing with Ryan. We have two of them on the podcast today. They helped him become who he is. And with that said, I have a question for you, Chief.
Okay.
There's a saying that leaders lead and bosses boss. I think it's very evident that you were a phenomenal leader as a chief, and you're probably still a phenomenal leader now that you're retired.
Oh, we're going to get into what she's doing in a second.
Oh, I could already tell. That don't stop. There's not a button you press. It's just like, I retired, well, I'm done. You cannot turn that passion off. You can't turn that trait off. It's part of who you are. With that said, there are a lot of officers, young officers, who have great ideas to not only change what policing looks like for the better, but to change the world for a better as well. But they run into a lot of bosses who do not want to hear new opinions. They want to shut them down. They don't think newer officers or officers in general should even be talking to somebody at their level. What would your advice be to those officers?
Well, we've all run into that, right? Even as a young officer, I ran into those roadblocks too, right? You have to find the leaders that are going to believe in you. I mean, if you've ever worked for a sergeant that really didn't believe in your success, you know it right off the bat, right? It's like, oh, I'm working for this sergeant and he doesn't really care about my future or me. He's just checking in and checking out. So I'd like to say that everybody's entitled to good leadership, but let's face it, you're not. What I tell young people is you're not always going to have good leadership, but it's your job to recognize that. And it's your job to go seek out somebody who will take an interest in you, who will take an interest in developing you. I had to do the same thing. There were certain people who wanted nothing to do with develop me, pouring knowledge into me. But I did. I went and found people who I thought I could learn to trust, right? And wanted to put that hand out and pull me up and develop me as a young person. So what I would say is when you run into those roadblocks, you're going to have to go find somebody that believes in you, and wants to invest in you, wants to pour into you, and then those are the mentors you're going to seek out, right? Not every single person that's in a leadership position over you is going to be a leader. Some of them are just going to be those bosses, and they are those roadblocks, and somehow you got to find a way around them. Even as a sergeant, when I had ideas that I wanted to change the organization, as I moved up in the organization, I would bring things to lieutenants, and I would purposely go seek out a lieutenant that I knew had the ear of the upper command, right? And say, hey, what do you think about this idea? Because let's face it, you got to go to people that are going to make things happen for you. And you're going to have to work around some of those roadblocks or some of those obstacles. And you know what? And I just stopped seeing the obstacles. I just wanted to stop seeing, hey, why I can't and why we can. And that's what I would tell people. Don't tell me what we can't do. Tell me what we can do and how do we get there. Because sometimes it's just what it takes. It takes finding the people that are going to help propel you and help you fulfill your mission and your purpose within that organization. And you have purpose as police officers. You have a passion. You've been called to this line of work for a reason. And I believe in that. I've talked about it. Joining a police department, you've been called to do something greater than yourself and in service to your community. So I mean, I could talk to you about that forever. I don't want to get off the track there.
I love it.
But what I would say there is, you got to go find the leaders that are going to help pull you along and help lift you up. And don't wallow in those guys who are just stuck there in their careers, right? They're going to be there, flatline right there for the rest of their careers and just be unhappy about it. And what I would tell people is, hey, when those people are ready to come out of the mud, I'll be ready to stand in there, hose them down with some water, and warm water at that, not even cold. So you're just going to have to go find those people who are, passionate about the line of work, want to implement that positive change, and join their team, and there's always going to be those people who are just, they're just going to be able to settle for mediocrity, and that's not in me. And anybody that worked with me knew I wouldn't settle for mediocrity.
And if you're listening to this too, I don't want you to think that this is just for law enforcement. This isn't anything.
Absolutely.
Like these are principles that you can use in any profession, anything you do, because it's the same. It's the same. You got to find those people that can help you out. You got to find the mentors. You got to be able to have allies, but you also got to recognize the ones that aren't going where you're going. And it's okay to be cool with them, but don't let them keep you down. And so one of the common themes that I'm seeing from this podcast is this word trust. And coming back to you, Pastor Jody, I think one of the things that's allowed me to go to where I'm going is, garnishing the trust from the community, but as well as garnishing the trust from law enforcement. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's always going to agree with what I have to say, but that's the beauty of it, because we're all human beings. We're all different. We're all going to see things differently. But there's this whole idea of being trust, or having trust, and not always being seen as being so polar left or polar right, but being able to see a little bit of both sides. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about what's going on in our society right now as it revolves around the Black community. And I'm saying Black community specifically because me and Pastor Jody talked about this a lot. And one of the things that I've talked about initially was, this whole idea of, Black Lives Matter. And I'm not going to go there and talk a lot about it, but initially when the whole Black Lives Matter movement started, I agreed with the whole, the phrase, the slogan, Black Lives Matter, because it's true. Yeah, we do. But understanding, the whole ideas, the concepts behind it and everything like that, that's what I started pulling myself away from in a sense. And so as a pastor of a church, it's difficult because the congregations, they come to you. They come to you for that stewardship. And so how have you managed in the position? Because again, you're at the pastor of the church is the head of the organization. How have you been able to manage having these difficult conversations and be able to still not only garnish the trust of your community, but at the same in your congregation, but at the same time maintaining that level of honesty and transparency and unbiases to an extent? So how have you been able to navigate that?
Yeah, great question, Ryan. I think when we talk about trust, so you have initial trust, which is what you had with the chief when you came to her. She trusted you, you trusted her. But then trust is often strengthened through track record. When you show a track record of integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, someone that does their homework, someone that that's displayed fairness across the board. So I think just over almost 20 years of pastoring, the people that I've been blessed to pastor, I've got a track record, which has allowed me to speak in this particular space and even say some things that maybe some of my congregation might not like or even agree with. Like you, of course, I believe and agree and affirm the principle of Black Lives Matter. we hear, well, all lives matter. Well, all lives can't really matter if Black lives don't matter by way of equal proportion to all other lives.
Got it.
Does that? I need that to sink in here.
No, I'm tracking.
You can't say all lives matter if my life does not matter, if my son's life does not matter, if my daughter's life, if it doesn't matter to equal proportion to all other lives. And so philosophically, I definitely agree with that. Now, when it comes to the organization and all that sort of good stuff, I've kept my distance from it because I think it has morphed into something that it probably was not intended to be when it first started. I'm just going to be real now. And if I get
it's needed.
Don't put the address on there so the hate mail won't come. And by the way, we're down for the pandemic anyway, so the mail just go to the mailbox at the church, right?
Hate, yeah.
Right. But what the organization has morphed into is not something that I can support, and not something that I can buy into. It appears to be, almost, somewhat anti-family, anti-male. It's more divisive than bringing people together. And I can just tell you right now, without dropping names or anything like that, but people that I know on the forefront of the movement of what we're trying to do by way of police change, they ain't feeling it either. Bad English, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They're not feeling it either. And so I think that we can all say Black Lives Matter by way of hey, we support the inherent worth and dignity of each other. You respect and support the inherent worth and dignity of me as an African American male. I can do the same for you as Caucasian, as Asian, and what have you. And we can have that kind of discussion. But as it pertains to the organization, you'll never see a Black Lives Matter logo on anything that I do. And what's interesting though, Ryan, so my youngest daughter has it on her screensaver on her phone. And my wife and I, we were just talking about it the other day, and I'm like, she's 13. How much does she know, and what have you? And my wife and I, we decided that we wouldn't say anything to her about it. Let her explore. Let her express this, and at some point in time we could have some conversation. But this is the only way at 13 she knows how to express that she's got concerns. That, for me, that's the bigger issue. My 13-year-old daughter, she sees what's happening out there. She knows about George Floyd. She knows about Breonna. She knows about it. She has concerns. Now, in her 13-year-old mind, she has no understanding of, maybe how to express it other than what she has seen through social media. Black Lives Matter. So I'm focusing right now more on the concern than the fact that she's got a hashtag Black Lives Matter on her screensaver. We can deal with that later on.
Remind me to tell you about that after this podcast.
Sure.
But one of the things I'm gonna transition, 'cause I know you have something too, Chief, on that. That's actually a good segue into what it is that you guys are doing now currently in our life. And I view Black Lives Matter as, unfortunately, because when you see it on the NBA court and all this other stuff, I had to ask myself, do these guys really know? Are they putting it out there because they're saying, like, yes, we want things to change from or we want to see change and we want people to know that, like, our lives truly do matter, like as Black people? Or are they endorsing the mission? And what I saw was, this is my personal belief, is I see an organization that's using the death of a man to push a political agenda. And so the reason why I say that's a good segue is because when you're an influencer, when you're a change maker, that's just your identity. It doesn't stop when you're the chief of police. It doesn't stop when you're the pastor. And one of the things that I want to get into, which is so cool, which is inspiring to me, is that both of my friends here today, Chief Comstock, she retired a little over a year ago now, and Pastor Jody is still the pastor of a church, but they're also getting into politics. And one of the reasons why I really support them a lot is because I know their heart. I know their heart is not to use certain things to push a political agenda. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. And it's so upsetting now because you turn on the TV and something happens and you see a politician that's going to grab it and say, oh, I'm going to use this now to push my agenda. You guys lead with your hearts, and you guys have always led with your hearts. It's through I've been able to see that through your actions. And so, coming back to you, Chief, you're running for city council.
Yeah, I'd just like to touch one more thing on the Black Lives Matter movement before we move off of that, is just that we want change. But, in the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, I think we thought of that as good. Like, let's get our message out there. Let's talk about that change. But now I agree with you, Pastor. It's turned into a change that I don't really want. It's not the right change. And sometimes that happens when the movement, makes a left turn. But here's also what I would say about that is, that change has to be, defunding the police department is absolutely frightening to me. I did a post last night about getting ready to go to sleep and just being able to lay my head on the pillow, knowing that I was going to sleep under the security of the men and women of the Chino Police Department. Yeah, and to take that away would be, just absolutely frightening to me. But in running for political office now, what I would say is also, Pastor Jody, like you're talking about your 13-year-old daughter, we got to be careful about the change we make when we're too impassioned, right? Because too much passion, like anything else, if you're passionate, it can be both your biggest strength, but also your biggest weakness, right? Because if we make changes while we're angry, right, or mad, we all know that's not the right time to correct our children, to certainly send off an email, to speak to a loved one while we're angry, right? And when you watch these things across the nation, when I watched the George Floyd video that morning and saw what happened to him, I was angry too. And I think the difference today is there's not a chief of police that I know of that's worth their salt that would say to themselves, "Oh yeah, well let's just not rush to judgment. Let's not." No, we all got angry. We were all angry, and I think that was the passion behind what happened here with these young men and women today. They're watching us like, we're done with this. So what I would say now,
Chief,
go ahead, because we got.
Don't mean to interrupt. Yeah,
I love this. I love conversation. Conversation is good.
But so this takes me back to what we said almost 15 minutes ago when you were making the introductions, Ryan. You brought up Ferguson. I applaud all of the chiefs, such as yourself, saying, "Wow, this is ridiculous." And I remember you were inflamed by what you saw with George Floyd. I think though, because when you mentioned Ferguson, the first thing that came into my mind is, are we there yet? Because we met around Ferguson. Now we're here with George Floyd. Again. And so that, I think that is where, especially in the African-American community, I think that's where it's compounded. And, and you brought me in because of your visionary leadership. You brought me in to the department to help to train the Chino PD around implicit bias, principal policing, where I was able to thread the historical needle because of your vision there. And my point here is this: I want our listeners to be real careful when you make you judge the passions or the angst, the anger of different groups. As an African American, as soon as you said Ferguson, I'm thinking, why are we still here? Ferguson, George Floyd, Breonna, before that, Rodney King. We can just continue to go on and on. So I applaud all the chiefs that and I know your history and I know your heart. But there may be a different response from my daughters, from me as an African American, just because it's like, wow, here we go again.
Yeah, and that's why I think that the cultural training is so important, because that's what I always tell people. It's like, because everybody always throws the statistics. Well, statistically speaking, this and that, and I get statistics, but what you don't see in statistics is you don't feel the emotion, you don't feel the pain. You don't understand. I mean, when I grew up, I learned about the history and culture of what it was like to be black in America. I learned about that. And then the reason I learned about it is because my dad and my parents knew that there may be times in my life where I'm going to experience some level of prejudice. I'll never forget one of the very first times I experienced it. I was in a city out this way, And me, my dad, and my grandfather walked into, it was an AMW root beer restaurant, the little fast food restaurant. And when we walked in, we were the only black guys. Everybody in that restaurant was white. Never forget it. And I remember everybody just staring at us like we were like, and I was young. I was a young kid at this time. And so I remember walking out, and I asked my dad, I was like, hey, Pops, like, why was everybody staring at us like that? And so that's one of the times when my dad was like, you know, Ryan, like that, these are some of the things that you're gonna face. You're an African American, and sometimes you're gonna go certain places sometimes where people are gonna make you feel like you're unwelcome. And that was one of the first times, and I had a few more after that. So that's why I understood the cultural history. But the reason I bring that up is because that's a feeling of where people see when they look at George Floyd. Yeah. It's not necessarily the death in and of itself. It's like, hey, no, I've experienced racial prejudices in these aspects of my life, and so this is kind of like the tipping stone for me. But what we have to be careful of doing, and I don't want to get completely off topic, but what we have to be careful of doing is allowing this situation to give us an excuse to just do whatever we want to do. Absolutely. Control whatever narratives we want to control. Yep. I saw something last night or the other day where I guess they were rioting in Chicago because a police officer shot at a guy that was shooting back at the police.
That's right.
And I'm like, okay, dude. So like, and that's my point is like, you know, I'm all about peaceful protest. I'm all about trying to change things. That's what me and AJ are here for. That's what Chief Comstock was doing. That's what Pastor Jody doing. We're changing it from the inside. You got to trust to know that we're going to keep doing that. We're not going to stop. But don't just start using these things as an excuse to act the way you want to act. And that's what's sad. And so going back to, and go ahead, AJ, I got to see you spinning over there.
Yeah, I just have a quick question for the pastor. You know, it's pretty evident that you've put yourself in a position to actually make the change you want to see in your local police department or in the police in general, not only by having allies, but allies with power, but also by training the officers as well. During these times, there are a lot of civilians who would like to do the same thing. They would like to make an actual change within the police department, whether it's locally, globally, throughout the nation, what have you. What piece of advice would you have for them in order to successfully do that?
Well, AJ, that's a great question. And what I'm going to say may come off as a little discouraging, but let me get through it for a second. There has to be an invitation at time, you know, and that was what was key here. The chief, you wanted to partner. You wanted there to be a collaborative partnership. You wanted to bring, the officers, you want to bring the police department together with the civilian community to work together. So there are those out there, AJ, to your point, that may want to do the kind of work that I've been doing out there in the community, and they may have a heart for it, they may have a passion for it, but they're also, it's going to take two to tango in a situation like this. They need to make sure that the leadership that's in those local police departments, that they are open to invite them to the table. I didn't bludgeon my way to the table. I matter of fact, you know, I knew I had a passion to do it. I wanted to do something, but it was the chief. It was, you know, the city manager, Matt Ballantyne. It was people in leadership who said, hey, we want to invite you to this table. Another piece of advice here, make sure that, you know, make sure that you're sincere about what you want to do, that you don't want to, you know, I didn't get into this to try to use this as a platform to try to build my church, try to build my ministry, try to get more numbers in, or eventually doing what I'm doing now, which is running for school board. This relationship. You weren't supposed
to tell him that yet.
I'm sorry, man. Pat, a preacher and a politician at the same time.
Gotta be corrupt. Gotta be corrupt.
Big mouth.
Gotta be corrupt.
But yeah, I know we'll get back to that. But no, it's got to be sincere. You've got to care. And watch this, AJ. You got to not only care for the community that you're trying to serve, but you also have to care for these officers that you are trying to get in front of. And that was key for me. And that was what came out of the relationship that I had with you and Lieutenant Rodney, he was sergeant at the time. I care for this department. I care for you, Chief. I care for these officers, and I an affinity and a love for our department just grew. So this was about the community, but it was also about my love for this department that's out there serving the community. So sincerity, you can't make it about yourself. You can't make it about you trying to leverage something out of it. You got to go in as an honest broker.
Yeah, and AJ, I would add to that in that when we first started exploring doing some of this training, we wanted to find somebody, like the pastor said, that we trust, that we knew had credibility, knowledge, and influence in the community. Not just somebody we're going to, parade up there, right? And just say, okay, almost like a checkbox. Okay, we have to do some diversity training. Okay, check.
Yeah, right.
Today, okay, that sounds good to me. No, I mean, knowing what we wanted to accomplish in the end, and then how quickly young police officers can forget our history or not even understand it. Mm-hmm. Because like anything else, they kind of take for granted that today is today, right? Mm-hmm. And they didn't understand the history of why why people of color or different marginalized communities feel an aversion to the police and being and having the police in their communities, and what historically has happened between the police and African Americans or Mexican Americans or whoever you want to put in there, right?
Gay and lesbians was a part of that.
Absolutely,
the history.
Stonewall, right?
Stonewall. It's a part of that conversation. Absolutely.
So when we started doing this training, I mean, it was so important to me. I don't know if you remember this, Pastor. I went to every session and said, we got to talk. We got to talk about race, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be hard, right? It's going to be emotional. And by the way, if I thought you were a racist, you wouldn't be working at the Chino Police Department,
sure
right?
Did.
You wouldn't be working here. But we have to have this conversation. And what was dumbfounding to me, when we got to the part about Rodney King, people are like, well, who's Rodney King? Right? I'm like,
wow. Crazy.
I'm not joking.
Crazy.
I'm like, it was crazy.
Remember.
I'm like
in Cali.
You don't know.
Cali. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you don't know who Rodney King is?
Right.
I would walk out of that introduction, I'd be like, oh man, we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Just reminding people like, hey, this is why we're here, and we're still not there. All these years later, we're still battling this.
Yeah.
And if we don't get real and start talking about it and really start making some change, and the change I want to talk about is hey, change that will matter.
Yeah.
Jody, you and I have talked about this, like with complaints or different things. And I loved it when you said the other night, hey, you cannot legislate out the maliced heart from any police department, right? You can put all these rules, all this legislature, everything in there, but if you got a person that's in a position of public trust, right, and they're abusing it, right, you cannot. There's no legislation that's going to root out the maliced heart. So do we need to have rules? Do we need to have checks and balances? Do we need to have access to making changes? Yeah, but the fact of the matter is you got to have the right people in these positions of public trust.
So let's
Chief.
Go ahead, AJ.
Chief, future council member Comstock, you hit the nail right on the head. There's a lot of times where officers and people of power shy away from those hard conversations, and Ryan and I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Like, the importance of having these conversations and learning from them, and then taking what you learned and actually applying it to in whatever way to get your desired help me out here, desired that word. But we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. So thank you for saying that.
So speaking about change, let's talk about the change. So Jody over here already let the cat out of the bag.
I'm sorry.
I was supposed to make the grand announcement and stuff like that. But
fix it in editing, man. I'm sorry.
Yes, the savage does it again. So you guys are change agents. You guys are setting out on a different mission a little bit, outside of what you're traditionally done. And so Chief Comstock, you're running for city council, and then Pastor Jody over here is running for school board. That's very, very cool because one, it's selfless, and two, in order to stimulate the change that you want to see, sometimes you just got to do it yourself, and that's, and sometimes that's one of the things, I think that's one of the reasons why I started what I did, is because I was like, if I want to, I could talk about it all day. I could talk about what's not being done, but it's another thing to just go out there and just be that change you want to see. So I want to ask you guys both a couple questions. Where are we at on time, Billy? 54. I want to ask you guys a couple of questions real quick before we wrap it up. But Chief, so why do you want to run for city council? And then when you do get elected, what are some of the things that, what are some of the conversations you want to have, or what are some of the things that you want to commit to doing for the city that you're running for?
Well, I think Pastor Moore said it the best when he said that I deeply, deeply care about the community that I was raised in. In the 1970s, when my parents moved to the city of Chino from the San Gabriel Valley, we didn't know where Chino was at, right? In fact, when my parents first moved us out there, I thought we moved to nowhere, right? But little did I realize when that community welcomed my family there, you fast forward, 40 years later, and they had just met their future chief of police, right? And because I am a product of Chino, because I am Chino's daughter, because coaches and teachers and pastors and friends and a lot of people who mentored me and shepherded my way, through this community, I want to now become a part of giving Chino good government in the future and making sure that it's governed the proper way, making sure that it's governed by people who have the best interests of the future of this community in mind. And I'm not saying that people get into politics for the wrong reasons, right? But I have a good sense of, how to lead at the executive level, with my experience as a chief of police, and step into the role of now helping govern a city and making sure that it's successful moving forward. And I ran into a lady who was supporting my campaign, and I called her and I wanted to tell her thank you for her support. And I said, "Ma'am, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected, is there anything of concern to you that you would like me to pay attention to?" And she says, Well, yes, Chief. She said, because I want to keep our police department. And it was powerful. Wow. Man. I'm like, this lady is living in the city. She's like, I'm worried about this defund the police movement. It really seems like it's taking some traction, some movement. And she goes, and I think I think with your experience and with seeing what you've done, as leader in the organization, she goes, I trust, right, that you're going to do the right thing for Chino and our police department in our future. And I'm like, yes, ma'am, I will. And thank you for your support, to my campaign.
Man, that's powerful.
It was really powerful. And I want to be the best government you have working for you right now is your local government. Let's face it.
Yeah, it's the most impactful.
It's the most impactful, right?
Yep.
And delivering good governing to the residents of Chino, the business owners, and just making sure we preserve that quality of life that we love. I mean, I love Chino. I'm everything about Chino. In fact, I almost wore my Hottingers baseball cap today just to prove it. I care about it, and like you say, it's. There's been a couple times in this process I've already asked myself, well, why am I doing this? Even my brother's like, hey, you just got out of that really, really hard position. You're so different now. You're so much more relaxed. He goes, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, yeah, Matt, I want to do it for the right reasons. Thanks, bro.
I love your brother, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I said, I want to do it for the right reasons, and ultimately it's up to the voters. I hope they'll have my little campaign slogan is Karen Comstock for District 4, Chino City Council. Trusted, respected, connected. Because I do feel that.
Boom. So and that word trust comes up again. And one of the things I want to highlight is she's from Chino, and it's important if we want to be the change that we want to see. Go back to where, don't forget where you come from. I think that's such a big thing. I always tell people all the time, is never forget where you come from. Even me, I still go back. I actually do mentoring in the same schools that I was, that's, if everybody went back to the communities that they're from and started giving back, we can start changing the way our societies are just locally. So, I don't want people to ever underestimate the power of being at that local level. I mean, that local level is so critical because, again, like we talked about, it's the most impactful. Going over to you, Pastor, you're running for school board, and that's a huge deal. My family's been on the school board. My uncle's been the president of the school board many times. My dad was very vested in the school district where I was from. So you're going into school board. One of the questions I have for you, and without asking you, where your stance is on it. Well, actually, no, I'm going to ask you what your stance is. I don't care. We do what we want to do on the podcast. But what this idea is, there's a lot of people that are saying they want to get rid of school resources on campuses. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because that school resource officer position probably changed my life in so many different ways that I can't even comprehend. I mean, and it's funny, I'm training people now, and everywhere I go in the city, people just know me from being on that campus as a mentor, as a big brother, as a, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, it's so much beyond, you know, this officer on campus. And so I've always said, instead of trying to get rid of the school resource officer position, we just need to find better school resource officers to patrol or to be on our campuses. How do you feel about that? Because, I mean, school education is important to you. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be running for school board. So, you know, shout out to both of you, but shout out to you, Pastor, for even wanting to go above and beyond just your call as a pastor and really being invested in your own community. So what made you decide to run for it? And then, you know, what's your take on that whole? And the reason I bring it up, because it's current, it's trending. Yeah. This is what better way to talk about some of these issues than to talk through them? Yeah,
the LA Unified School District just dealt with this, right?
Yeah, Yep. So I got to tell you, and just like the chief here, I love my community. I love the Chino Valley. I know that I'm called to the Chino Valley. What's funny is that in my quiet time this morning, I was in 1 Corinthians, and Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, he says, live out the assignment that the Lord has given to you. And I think that's verse 17. And so that resonated with me this morning, especially as I was coming here, that there is an assignment on my life, and I to this valley, to be a blessing to it, to be a voice of reason, to be a voice of just of common sense, and to really understand the issues that's taking place in the community. I'm running for the school board because I have a keen awareness of the complexities that our young people are going to face. The pandemic, racial unrest, economy, I could just go on and on and on. This stuff is not going to be fixed overnight. And so our children who are in junior high school, they're going to be faced with a complexity of problems that I can't even explain right through here. And so I want to be a part of seeing that our children are prepared for a world that they are going to inherit, making sure that they are able to step out there and be equipped, both academically but also emotionally, to face the world out there. As it pertains to the school resource officers, I got to tell you that for those who are saying let's get rid of this, it just reminds me of just how fickle we can be at times. Here's what I mean by that. When all the school shootings were taking place and people were coming on there with AKs and trying to take out kids and what have you, we need more officers on the campuses. We need more police on the campuses. We need this. And now all of a sudden, we flip the script. Just again shows how fickle we can be as society. I agree with you, my friend. Don't try to get rid of school resource safety officers. Put the right people in those positions. Put officers in there that care about children, care about their future, that has the right temperament, put officers in those places that that would see that role as a missions field for them, and then let the departments give them all the training that's needed, so that they can be a light on that campus. Man, I saw the way you handled that role. I saw what you did there, and if you remember when you first went, I called you and said,
school research officer.
What? Like, what are you doing?
I'm supposed to be chasing,
drug dealers. What are you doing, man? But when you were able to share with me just the call on, this is being a part of the call in your life, I saw it. I saw it. We need more people like you on these campuses. Because you were a mentor with a gun, man. You were a mentor. You had your uniform on. You had to be strapped and all that sort of good stuff. That's what you wear as your belt, right?
Exactly.
You're a police officer. You're sworn, right?
Don't come to my campus. Right? Don't start nothing. Won't be nothing.
Let's not get it twisted. You still packing, right? But you were a mentor. You were a confidant. You were someone that saw the potential of these young people, and you leveraged that to be to be a great resource of change on the campus. And so if we can find other officers like you to do that, I think it's why get rid of it,
And thank you so much on that, Pastor. And I'll let you turn over to you, Chief, before we wrap it up. But thank you for that. It means the world to me. And that was my goal. I think I told Chief Comstock, like when I went to that position, I said, my goal is to go there and rebrand the position of a school resource officer, not just locally, but
internationally. Yes. Yeah.
And I think I was able to accomplish that in many ways. But the thing that's cool is that there already are a lot of really, really good school resource officers that currently exist. And this whole idea of getting rid of them, I think it's a perfect place if you have the right person to be an example to what policing is about. And not only be an example, but I mean, as a young black guy, when you're out there working with black students or minority students in general, for them they can see themselves in you in many aspects. And now you take somebody that had no aspiration to being an officer and that wants to become a part of that change. I think that's kind of the power of just the uniform of you, that uniform presence, because now you can physically see yourself or what you want to be like. And I know that to be true because it's happened so many times. And this is why I brought Chief and Pastor on here today, because again, not only are they mentors, but they're friends of mine, and I support you guys. I openly support you guys in whatever it is, because I stand by what you guys believe in. Go ahead, Chief. I'm say what you're going to say, Chief, and then AJ, I'll wrap it up with your final parting thoughts.
Sure. I like to keep it real when we start talking about police on school campuses. Back in the day, when we first put police officers on those campuses, really what it was to deal with truancy. We really knew we needed to get students to class in order to address truancy issues in order for them to be successful. But let's face it, I'm certain that somewhere across the nation, and even we've made some mistakes with police officers on campus at different times, and you got to own it when you make those mistakes. But the worry about police officers on campus is it's the chain from school to taking kids right to prison, school to prison pipeline, right? So really, the mission of the school resource officer has really evolved over the years. It's its own specialty in policing now. It's nationally recognized. There's curriculum out there for it. And the mission of any good school resource officer is exactly the opposite, because we care about our children, because we want them to be successful. We want to give them every opportunity in these positions to graduate from high school and go on to fulfill their life's purpose. And that is the mindset of the properly trained school resource officer. They're a mentor, they're a teacher. They're trying to intervene at the lowest level while we still have a chance to change the trajectory of that young person's life in order to get them through school, because we know that the best opportunity for people to advance their way is through education and opportunity, right? So, and it starts with them, finishing high school. So when it's done the correct way, I believe in the mission of the school resource officer. And Ryan, I can't think of a more influential person than you. I mean, look at that video you had when you were out there with your moves and you were dancing, right? That thing
I taught him everything he knows.
For the record, those are better moves than AJ.
And it was amazing. That was a high school rally. I'm like, I'm watching that at home on TV. I'm like, look at him. Look at the influence that he's having over these young men and women, not just to better themselves, not just to stay in school and finish their education, but more importantly, man, if you could just touch those young men and women's soul and spirit to fulfill their calling, if it is to go into policing, right? And it starts with selecting the right person to go to those campuses.
That's so important.
That has the right heart to serve in that role. And Ryan, and that was, some of my life's work was with you. I asked you to be an Explorer advisor, right? I'm like, you want to change the future of policing? It starts with these young men and women right here, right? And because I started there, I poured into that program, because that is what will change the future of policing. Our children are a promise. They're America's promise. They're the future, right?
That I'll never forget when the three of us, we talked about the school to prison pipeline, it's real. It's real. It's real. But you don't fix that by throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
We got to fix the system.
That's right.
We got to fix the system. We got to fix the system. You've heard me talk about the three arms of, I come from a biblical worldview. So you've heard me talk about the three arms that God uses, both the church, family, and government. So we've got systems to fix that school to prison pipeline. One of them has to do with the family. and one of them has to do with the systems in our school districts. That's why I want to be a part of it, so we can look at that. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. School to prison pipeline, it is real. I've got the numbers on it, but there's some things that we need to do before we just look at the resource
and part
officers.
of being a part of that school to prison pipeline, by having the right people in there I can't tell you guys how many times where I had somebody in my office that I could have easily given them a citation for. I could have easily taken them to juvenile hall, but recognizing where that was it going to be a solution, or was it just going to be more of a problem? And so that was kind of where I based my decision making on. I was like, where are we at in this? You got to be able to have that person that can make that decision, look at a totality of a situation and say, yeah, it's easy to give a person a ticket, but am I going to change the behavior by giving a person a ticket? It's almost like you look at it on the streets, without opening up a whole nother conversation. AJ and I talked about this before, is you can't arrest your way out of problems. You know what I mean? So because of that, it takes a person to be able to go there and say, we got to find another solution. But like you just said, Pastor, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't just remove me now and just say, oh, all of a sudden I'm going to remove him because we don't. And again, that goes back to using the death of one man to start pushing all these other political agendas that they've been trying to do from day one.
Because forget just going to prison. If you're not there to protect the kids, they're going to the graveyard. So let's look at it holistically. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you know the heart of the school resource officers at the Chino Police Department, I would say that they view those campuses as theirs. I mean, they own them.
Yep.
They want to protect those children. They want to make sure that they're successful. They want to just to protect them, not people who want to call to harm them with guns,
Yep.
but also from people who want to cause them harm by other means,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
With pandering drugs,
Yep.
Or predators,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
Absolutely. And particularly in my position as the chief of police, you're working in partnership with the school district, which is why I'm so happy Jody's running, for the school board, because honestly, when you're sitting there in that office and you're looking at all those campuses when it's going down, you feel like a responsibility to every parent that's in your community that those are my kids too, right? I mean, and I had parents beg me, plead with me, promise me, Chief, that when my son or daughter goes to school today, they're not going to have X, Y, or Z happen to them. And I would have to tell them, hey, I can't make that promise. But here's what I can tell you. I've got trained police officers who are prepared to deal with that threat to them, and we're going to do our best to mitigate that threat when it happens.
It's so funny because every single one of those kids, I always refer to them as my kids.
Sure,
even
kids.
Today, like even when I'll see them on the street, like, oh, there go my kids over there. The other day I was on patrol and they were like, oh man, some kids that didn't even go to my school, they were like, hey, that's Lugo's cop right there. But it's that identity, man. That was my identity. It still is to this day. It will always be. And so I encourage you, if you're aspiring school resource officer, if you're running for school board, if you're running for city council, just make sure you really, really think about a lot of the answers that we need for our communities instead of having a knee-jerk reaction to just saying, hey, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Go ahead, AJ. What are your final closing thoughts, man? What kind of what do you have for us?
Yeah, so one of the big parts of this podcast is change, how to implement change, what change is needed, what change is not. With that said, that makes this episode that much more powerful. To every community member out there, we could change the police departments by working together. We don't have to be divided. As Pastor Jody said, we can have allies in the force, and we could train our police officers to help reflect the community or to help understand what the community is going through. For every officer out there that wants to make a change, fight hard. You're going to come into obstacles, whether it's externally or internally, but everything worth having, it's worth fighting for. And for every supervisor that wants to make that change, take a risk, take a step out of your comfort zone and trust your officers who are vetted. Maybe they're not vetted, but maybe they have that right passion or that right sparkle in their eye, and they want to go out there and change the world. We have a chief here who did that with a rookie officer, and look at him now.
Yep.
He is changing the modern day policing. He's doing it. He's doing it before our eyes,
Sure
and it's
is.
because he's had mentors and people in his corner to help propel him towards those goals. So keep fighting the good fight.
AJ, and that beard just looks beautiful. While you were saying that, bro, I was like, man, that
Looking
man's
good.
beard. Chief, final thoughts for our listeners.
I just want to thank you, Ryan, for having us on here today. And Pastor Jody, you spoke to me today here earlier. in running for city council, this is God's plan. This is God's purpose. I believe if God has a plan for me, and I know that if He wants me to serve on the council here, on November 3rd, He's going to put that into motion. And if not, I know God has another plan for me. So I'm going to turn this over to Him and let Him open up some doors and help me define the next chapter of purpose in my life.
I love it.
And if it's there, I'll gladly accept the challenge and move forward. And I promise to serve Chino with the same degree of integrity and responsiveness that I did as the chief of police. And Ryan, I hope you know just how proud I am of you. Of the change that you are forging, of your podcast, of your vision, for your passion, and just the thousands of young lives that you're touching and changing and mentoring and inspiring. You are doing such good things with BBU, and I'm proud to call you my friend and one of my former coworkers. So thank you for having us here today.
Thank you so much, Chief, for having us. It means the world. And Pastor, final thoughts.
Well, it's been great just hanging out with you two. Like I said, two of my favorite people. Just like what the Chief just said, I'm trusting the sovereignty of God in this. No one that I know of would just put themselves out like this to be criticized. It's all, it's already, happening in certain areas in social media, what have you, not wanting a pastor on the school board because it's going to make the school board too religious, it's going to make the school board, so conservative and all that sort of good stuff. So it's already out there. So no one goes out to do something like this unless they really feel called to do it. And that's what I want your listeners to hear, my friend. I sense a call to this. I sense this is a part of the ultimate plan that God has for me, to be a part of the change that needs to take place in the Chino Valley School District. So I'm a reluctant warrior. I really am. I didn't file until the end of last week.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm a reluctant warrior. But I'm excited about the possibility and just being here with you guys. AJ, man, I just appreciate the passion alongside with the beard, man.
I appreciate
it's power in the beard,
it's
like
great.
Samson.
Right.
And Ryan, man, thank you. You said, I'm a founding member of BBU. The work that I've been able to do with you, this partnership, it has been life-changing for me. It's had a global impact. Of course, it's had what I call the macro impact, but it's had a micro impact on me as an individual, man. So keep pushing, bro. Keep doing what you're doing. This is good stuff, man.
Thank you so much, Pastor. What we're going to do to close it out, before we close it out, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, which is Thin Line Anthem. The Thin Line Anthem, they are a nutrition brand that actually promotes healthy lifestyle. And if you are in the professional law enforcement or any other profession, we do need to maintain that healthy lifestyle. So that way we can keep going and also be a part of that change. So shout out to Thin Line Anthem. I've been using their products. Pastor, when I pulled up today, Pastor Jody asked me, "What are you doing to keep your physique?" Hey, Thin Line Anthem. That's all I got to say.
Cheeseburgers and Thin Line Anthem. That's it.
Hey, you know what's funny though is I did have a cheeseburger last night before I got off of work.
Whatever it is, could you put it in this bottle of water? Right? I need some.
I can get you some Thin Line Anthem in that bottle.
Up, please.
I can get you some Thin Line Anthem in that bottle.
Because the COVID weight is about.
Their pre-workout will have you ready to lift a car.
Is that right? Okay.
Really?
Okay. All right.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So shout out to our sponsor. But one of the things I'm feeling led to do real quick before we close it out, I'm feeling led to pray for Chief and for Pastor, but not only just them, but just our country.
Yeah.
And the decisions that are coming up. We are approaching election season, and people don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it. People don't know if if the mail-in ballots are going to work. It's just a lot of anxiety that people are experiencing. So the beauty behind having your own podcast and stuff like that is you can do what you want to do, like I said before, and we're going to pray today. So let's go ahead and pray. So dear Heavenly Father, I come before you, and I just ask that you just bless those specifically in this room, Chief Comstock and Pastor Jody, on their mission, Lord, to just really be change vessels for our communities and our our society. This is a plan and work that you put on their heart, and you feel that they're called to do it. So I just ask that you would just bless them along the way, so that way they would have the strength, the courage, and the wisdom to navigate this road as they travel it, and also put the right people in their way, so that way they can go out and do your work, allow you to be glorified in it all. And I also ask that you bless all of our listeners out there that are tuning in, Lord. There's a lot of people feeling anxiety and stress and just, all sorts of different things right now because of the current state we're living in with COVID and the racial unjust, all that stuff. So I just ask that you give them peace. Your word says that you can give them peace. Philippians 4:6 says, be anxious for nothing, but through prayer and supplication, make your requests may be known to God, so that way he can give you that peace that surpasses all understanding. I ask that you would give all of our listeners that peace that surpassing understanding. Allow them to realize that we may not know all the answers. We may not know everything that has to come with everything, but we do know that you give us a peace despite those situations. So we love you. We thank you. And I give all these things to you, for it's in your son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for all of our listeners tuning in. AJ, it's always a pleasure, my brother. Billy, thanks again for doing the work you do behind the camera. And Chief and Pastor, can't thank you guys enough. You guys, I love you guys dearly. And you guys have my support. So I want the world to know openly that you guys have Ryan Tillman and Breaking Barriers United support throughout the way. So
thank you.
Love you guys. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, Billy. Thanks, AJ.
Take care. Stay strong.